Where's Odette? Where's Odette?
She's just outside Shopping right now.
Well, just by way of background, Patricia Lille, of course, resigning today, but followed by four members of the her mayoral committee, as well by the chief whip of the Democratic Alliance at the Cape Town Council.
And of course, they didn't just leave, but they gave insights, at least in terms of their own experiences within the DA. Shaun August telling us that the DA is racist, that not all people in there are racist, but certainly the structural makeup of the country is racist. And it looks like they're beginning with their media conference. So let's listen in there.
On the process where we are currently within the city of Cape Town, the council is now adjourned, and we have, as you know, the Bowman's report was on the agenda. The speaker has announced it's now open to the public, so you can do your go onto the city's web. You'll find all of that information on there. The council has now accepted the recommendations that it needs to, the two reports, it's two reports as you know, is now being referred to the speaker. There's two processes that now needs to be followed. The one is for, in respect of the officials, it now goes to the city manager, and for the councillors involved, it goes to the speaker for investigation. From the DA side, the DA caucus, we're very happy that we've come to this position where the information that has been provided by Bowman's can now be can now go to the disciplinary process, because that investigation is now completed on their part. We also know that before we actually got to the position, there were some of our colleagues that stood up and left, and that to us is a real pity, because as the DA, and we expect all our colleagues to be in having the same position, that wherever there is alleged corruption, we would like all of our colleagues to be part of the process of having it investigated, and where the necessary steps needs to be taken for disciplinary action, that needs to be supported. So it's unfortunate that some of our colleagues that always said that, you know, when there is allegations made, it must be proven, it must be taken further, that they had to leave at this stage. From our side and from the caucus side, we comfortable that we've taken the citizens of Cape Town into our confidence, and we now await for the process of the disciplinary steps to be taken, one hand by the speaker, and on the other hand by the city manager. And the outcomes of that, we will respect that, and that will come back to council after they've completed that process. And so what we'd like also to say to the citizens of Cape Town, this is the DA that you voted for. The DA that will not stand for corruption, and where they, soos hulle sê, waar daar rookie is, ons gaan het soek. We'll make sure that those matters gets investigated, irrespective if 5 people leave. It might be a few more that leave. We will, even if we're in the opposition, that will be our position. The DA is for clean governance. Clean governance, that's the DA's promise to the city of Cape Town. And that's what people voted us in for, and that's where we are today. So we are not fazed by people leaving. We just say that if there's any other person that would like to leave, leave for the right reasons. When we are fighting corruption, don't jump on the bandwagon and leave. Be with us to clean up dirty governance. The DA has no problem in putting that forward. And we would again do it if it happens within the new administration. We'll do it again, because that's what the DA has promised, and that's what we're delivering. Thank you very much.
I think I also need to just clarify my presence here as the provincial leader of the DA, because I think it's very important to draw a very clear distinction between the council processes and the DA processes, because I get a sense that some of us are conflating these processes. We are all aware that the DA entered into an agreement with the current mayor, and in terms of that agreement, the current mayor's term will be coming to an end on the 31st of this month. Part of that agreement was that as the DA, we are going to drop all the internal charges that were faced by the current mayor in the DA. And we have done that. And we also said that we are not going to interfere with the council processes, which is what is happening now. So the council is now embarking on its own process. The report is out, it must be tested, and that is the council process that must be followed by the councillors of the city of Cape Town, and that has absolutely nothing to do with the DA. And I think some of you might have seen my statement with regard to the 5 former DA councillors that have resigned. We really wish them well. I mean, they took a decision to leave the DA. They have their own reasons. And I think in due course we will be able to respond to some of the allegations that were made by them. But from where I'm sitting as the leader of the DA, I really don't want this to be a tit for tat. That is why I said their decision to resign as members of the DA and councillors of the DA must be respected. And as I said, we wish them well in their future endeavors. So I have released a statement, in this regard to clarify our position as a DA, and I think it's very, very important to clearly distinguish between these 2 processes, the internal processes of the DA and the council process which is now unfolding.
I'm Thomas Walters, the first Deputy Chair of the DA's Federal Executive. Really my role is here to dispel a couple of myths. First of all, there was never ever an agreement that the DA will attempt to influence any process in council to stop an investigation into serious allegations of misconduct. There was a lot of obfuscation, a lot of misinformation that has been sent around in the media. I see it was also the subject of some factually flawed opinion pieces. It's very clear in the agreement with Patricia and Lille that all independent processes of the council will be respected, exactly to give her the opportunity to clear her name. And we expect certainly from our councillors to stand up to the leadership of the party if such undue attempts of influencing an independent council process had to be attempted. So you would have noticed all of us actually staying very far away to the green items, both in the caucus executive meetings, the caucus meetings, as well as in council. So I want to emphasize what Bongi said. This is an independent process. We respect independent processes and it must take its course. It's as simple as that. I also believe that we must not allow past disputes, past social media, interpersonal exchanges, misinformation, process obfuscation be projected onto this issue. There's an independent investigation. There's a set of recommendations that must be dealt with the council. And I want to emphatically state that the DA respects the City of Cape Town and the governance systems of the City of Cape Town to do what it must do. I also would like the opportunity to say that, and this is not making any untested allegations. In fact, as I said, processes must be concluded and allegations must be tested. As a lot of people, including the Mayor of Cape Town, has indicated, let's test these allegations in an independent investigation. But I must make it very clear that our country went through a very traumatic time with a president that clung onto power avoided delayed processes of investigation, distracted public attention away from the issues at hand. The DA is not going to play into that game. We're not going to play the game where processes can be obfuscated, where the public can get further confused. There's an independent investigation. It must be followed. The DA will not support a culture of Jacob Zuma, South Africa. The DA will support a culture of Busi Maimani's South Africa. Thank you.
Any questions? Yes, sir.
I'm left more confused than anything else. You said there's 2 reports. What report do we believe? What report do we work from? And those recommendations, especially the one saying that the mayor should be criminally charged. What was decided on that? I mean, you haven't answered that. And how do we distinguish which one is correct and which one you adopted? I mean, there's 2 reports. What do we work from?
Both reports was investigated by Bowmans. They went through a process. The one was to find out if the mayor had influenced the city manager or the administration process. That has now been referred to the speaker. The other one is the general one, to look at all of the aspects of the electric buses and all of that. So that one is the other one that has also been referred. So it's 2 reports, but it's the same. It's the same matter.
And both have been adopted?
Both has been adopted and referred to for disciplinary. Yes, sir?
Yeah, for clarification, the way I understood there was a recommendation. Sorry, my name is Jan Gaard from the Post Office. The way I understood there's a recommendation that Patricia will and others be criminally investigated. Has that been adopted by the Council?
Yes, what has been adopted is that it goes through the internal process, but also referred to SAPS for further investigation. Yes, sir.
2 questions, one for you, Mr. Twig, and the other for Madam Salters or to Ms. Maladministration. My first question is, you mentioned about even if you have to, you would go and sit in the opposition benches. Is that you saying that the DA in the City Council is preparing itself to move into the opposition benches? And in the second question, basically, are you admitting that you weakening the DA has been weakened? And then to Mr. Walters or Madikizela, considering that Council has now made a resolution and the matter has been referred to the Speaker for investigation, will the DA reinstate charges against Mayor Lille?
So if I can go first, I can guarantee you that and I'm very confident about that we will stay in power in the city of Cape Town. My comments relates to us fighting corruption. It doesn't matter if we're in power or not in power. We will continue fighting corruption. But I'm definitely sure we will be going into the next election in power in the city of Cape Town.
Well, I mean, as the DA, we are going to respect the process that has been now followed by the City Council to deal with this matter. As I said earlier, that our view as far as this matter is concerned is that we must allow the council to follow its own processes and then await the outcome and then take it from there. That is what the decision that we've always taken as a DA.
Okay. The question of are we preparing to put ourselves into an opposition role? No, we are preparing ourselves to take over the government of South Africa, and we want to grow our vote. And one thing, and look, and I say this as somebody that's involved in politics for 24 years, if you make short-term plans for convenience, if you just deal with a difficult situation in a convenient manner in front of you, ultimately, you will guarantee that you end up in staying in opposition. If you do not constantly support the underlying principle of rule of law and accountability, then you won't. If you don't do that, you won't ever get into government. And I think that's actually been demonstrated in Cape Town, as we saw in the past with a very difficult coalition situation with the former mayor here, Helen Zille. You can see it where the DA has been coming from since 1994. So just from a historic perspective, let's not just look at the moment. Let's look at the long-term historical mission of the DA. And then, in terms of reinstating charges against Patricia de Lille, the reason that we made the agreement that we made is to declutter the confusing situation that we had with the cessation of membership process, internal motions of no confidence, disciplinary processes with the council process. Frankly, the public out there did not get the facts. They did not have a report like this in front of them. And we will, of course, be studying that report ourselves. So partly also because we heard the mayor that we wanted her to get an opportunity to state a case, which this processes will now provide her. So we decluttered the scenario, but we at all stages reserved the right, based on new allegations that might arise from this process, once this process has been concluded, to take the necessary action in a disciplinary manner. So there's no one's been kept off the hook. Nobody, all of us are equally being held accountable. We expect all our councillors to be held accountable. And yes, and I think we're quite insistent that this is what we as the party, regardless of what way that investigation goes, that the space for this investigation needs to be respected.
Yes, ma'am. You going to ask something?
Oh, yes. This is Nomo Jisoran from the SAPC. An issue that you did touch on a little bit earlier on. And I'd like the leader of the party to just answer the issues. When we spoke to most of the councillors that have resigned, they mentioned a lot of issues with regards to how the party works and made some damning allegations with regards to racism as well. Can you talk to that as the leader of the party?
Well, most certainly. You know, what I find strange is that people occupy positions of power for almost a decade. And then when the power exchanges hand and they lose elections, they then come up with all sorts of allegations. But let me just be clear here. In any organization, you will find racists, you will find homophobes, you will find people who are trying to entrench patronage. By the way, some of these members fall in one or two of those categories that I've just mentioned. But the important thing here is that we must not try to use the excuses when the party take action against the wrongdoing. Because those are kind of excuses that you find when people take action against the wrongdoing. Personally, if I get confronted by someone who's racist, it is my duty and responsibility as the leader to deal with that person. To run away is to actually betray the struggle against racism that people died for. So that is my responsibility as the leader, instead of coming up with all sorts of excuses and run away. But as I said, we will react to some of the issues that were raised by some of those people after, studying that carefully, and then react as the party, but because we have to react as the party. But I do want to make it very, very clear that we have a situation in this party and other parties as well, where instead of people joining the party and become members of the party, then they become members of members. And when you take action against that one particular member, then people then decide to throw their weight behind that individual and come with all sorts of excuses. So the point here is that as the DA, we are committed to non-racialism. In fact, that's one of our founding principles, which is non-racialism. And we cannot sit here and lie that we don't have some challenges when it comes to some of our principles. But our collective responsibility as leaders of this DA is to deal with some of the people who might be reversing our gains in terms of all the areas that I've mentioned. Because, as I said, some of the people who are crying foul can be accused of the very same allegations that they are making. So the truth here is that the party is taking a very strong stance, and the party has decided to act against the alleged wrongdoing. And again, I want to put it very clearly that these are still allegations that must be still tested. And as the party members, we must then support the caucus of the City of Cape Town in getting to the bottom of those allegations instead of coming up with all sorts of excuses and decide to leave. And let the outcome of this process tell us exactly what transpired, because we take these allegations very, very seriously. So from where we are sitting is that those allegations that were made conveniently because people had to come up with excuses for them to leave. And the last thing I want to say is that we are very much aware that the plans to leave the party by some people has been on the cards for some time. And we will be obviously issuing a statement in due course to tell you exactly what is happening here.
Yes, sir.
Dave James from Times Live. Two related questions. One is, do you have your agreement with Patricia de Lille in writing? And the reason I ask that leads to the second question, which is, what if she comes along before the October 31st and says that she is retracting her resignation? Do you have a strategy for that?
Well, then the agreement ceases to function. Look, we would like to think that the mayor is respecting our agreement. In that regard, I think one of the reasons that on the 31st of October that she agreed to resign is to create the space for an unadulterated, independent investigation where the various allegations can be tested. But if she doesn't stick to the agreement, then such an agreement ceases to exist, and that means the party has the right to institute whatever processes it feels fit according to our constitution. And if I can slightly abuse the opportunity just to go to your question. Look, I don't think you award prizes in politics in South Africa if somebody leaves the DA, of course, before an investigation, not afterwards, before an investigation, and then calls the DA racist. I mean, it's no prizes, there's nothing original about it, it's a standard thing that we see. Let me just emphasize the fact, and it's there in election results, it's there to be studied, it's a factual statement that the DA has the most diverse leadership, the most diverse electorate of all political parties in South Africa. So that I think is enough of an answer to people making the usual, playing the race card. And then there were also allegations made of intimidations that are intimidation and people being told what to do that are factually downright untrue. It's blatant untruths that have been shared. Look, there's a number of allegations like that. It's clearly, and I would really like to appeal to the media, let us not clutter the space and confuse the issues. There's an exercise in accountability where everyone's rights are being respected, where everyone has the opportunity to state their case. If people, and I sincerely hope that everyone involved in this will adhere to this principle, if you are interested in justice, then you will follow the course of justice, and we encourage all parties in the council. Of course, we cannot interfere, but all parties in council and all role players in council to respect these processes. And I would really like to strongly appeal to the media to not, frankly, clutter the space with highly negative and untruthful propaganda.
Okay, any further questions? I can also just say that some of the allegations made today by some of our ex-colleagues has also surprised us, because in the same caucus that we are, it has never been raised by any of them. So it also surprised us. But then again, we understand it's to divert attention away from the issues that we've agreed in caucus today. In council today. So that doesn't surprise us. But the issue that surprised us was that those kind of allegations made, whereas they had 2 years being councillors, and that hasn't come to the fore from any of them. And it's come now when we were about to discuss the issue of being a member of a member.
So I don't know if I heard you correctly answering to my colleague there. So the agreement is not in writing?
The agreement is in writing, yes.
Okay, yes, sir.
Yeah, two questions. Just you do have a vacancy in council now with Chief Whip. Is there any names floating in the caucus for Chief Whip? When will that process start? And then my second question to Mr. Walters is that, is there a DA policy or rule that two people who are partners may not serve in the same caucus?
If I can go first, there's no names floating. Our first thing that we need to do now is we've got vacancies. We need to now replace those people that left with a list of names that we have in the party to bring those names in. And then we'll go through the normal processes of looking at the appropriate person or persons that might fill the positions.
I just wanted to know, tell me, are there any concerns for how this might affect the elections next year, of the party's reputation and so forth?
We've seen this playing itself out. Towards every election, you always find people who break away from the party, and I think this has been the history of political parties in South Africa. But if you look at the Democratic Alliance, we've been growing consistently. Because one thing we've never deviated from is to stick to our principles and values. And as I said, no one is invincible in the Democratic Alliance. This party is founded on very strong principles. If people decide to leave, then they are welcome to leave. No one is bigger than this party. And we will do what we've always done to make sure that we grow consistently, as we have been doing since 1994. But of course, it is concerning because you want to grow and not to lose people. We would have loved to have retained these members, but they've taken a decision to leave, which means we must focus on two very important things: on the citizens of Cape Town, and make sure that our focus is on service delivery, but also prepare for elections next year. So that is what we need to do, and we've been doing that, since this party was formed. So it's not something new, for people to break away from the party, but that's not going to deter us as the party, from focusing on what is important.
To respond to Earl?
Yes. The way the DA regulations work, it depends whether somebody in a particular caucus were partners already or not before the election process starts. So, yes, as a principle, it's something that the DA doesn't condone. However, there are particular exceptions if somebody already in the existing caucus fall in love, that the DA, contrary to popular belief, does not want to legislate. And then I think secondly,
and we are a loving party.
Yes. Secondly, there's also what we have in the Democratic Alliance, what we call the FCEC, the Federal Candidates Electoral Commission, where if situations had to arise where judgment is exercised by the party, whether it will be harmful for partners to be in the same caucus. So we do apply judgment, but as a general rule, it's not something that is condoned. And yes, there were also a question about concerns. Look, we had it in the previous election.
All right, that's the initial response by the Democratic Alliance in the Western Cape to the very strong allegations that we've had being made against the party today by those 5 councillors who have left. And while they're promising that they'll add much more substance to the response they're giving in later days,